Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for dropping by. I have a worldwide exclusive today. Today, I speak to you from Canada. Last night or yesterday, we had a big lottery here. The lottery didn't go. It's now up to $70 million. Everybody's busy buying tickets. But I have been much luckier than the people who didn't win the lottery. I've actually been very lucky, and it's Irish luck. I've got found two four-leaf clovers, and I have both here today. I've been lucky enough to have had two people that have come into my life that have helped me with various aspects of this search that I'm on, and I have both today. The first one I would like to sort of introduce is Sinead Wellahan, who is an assistant of mine who helps me do interviews, and we've got an exclusive interview today. This is the first time that my other assistant, Desta Barnabe, is going to speak in public, on camera. And so welcome, Sinead, and thank you for all that you've done for me so far.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here participating in this conversation and getting something out of Desta. Beautiful.
So it's like having two Irish cover girls work for you. It's like it's an extremely honorable situation, and Sinead helps me with interviews, and she also helps me make lists. And Desta Barnabe, now I'm being told just before this started that it's been 6 years, and to me it seems like just like yesterday. It's like I can't believe that much time has gone on. And it was actually Sinead that pointed that out to me, so it shows you how lost I am and how I have to be sort of guided. So I'd like to welcome today Desta Barnabe, who has her second book out, and she is going to talk about it with Sinead and I. And I'm really honored that she would actually do an interview for us and start to talk about her experience, because as people know, my main people I listen to are people who are channeling or people who are interacting with the intelligence behind the UFO phenomena. And that's how I believe if you want to get the answer to what's going on here, you've got to go to these kind of people. So Desta, welcome.
Thank you, Grant.
Beautiful.
Very sweet.
And Desta is from Winnipeg, where I live. Sinead is from Toronto. And Desta and this is why I want to sort of start with the first question that I have, and then I'll hand it off to Sinead. Desta and I met at a conference. You can sort of maybe reveal that in Vancouver. And I really didn't remember too much about that. You came back to Winnipeg you were working in Vancouver, you came back, and we had an experience that I'll always remember is that you had a download experience on a morning when you and I were going to meet in the St. Vital Mall. And I'd like you to maybe detail our history, the beginning, how it starts, how you meet me, how you come back. I'm running a group here in Winnipeg called Experiencers Anonymous. You come to the group, we make an arrangement, and then you have this incredible download that I think I've made you tell a few times on various rabbit holes. But go from there. Talk about how we met and how we had this download experience. And I should thank you very much for all the material you've done for me. Desta is sort of behind the scenes for people who may not know Desta. I think a lot of people do know Desta, but she's behind the scenes helping me do my stuff. And you'll also see her at a number of conferences around the world. You'll see her working behind the scenes at the Manchester conference, at the Starworks UFO conference, in Starworks USA conference in Laughlin, Nevada. And she also helps Paula Harris run a conference at Crestone, Colorado every August. So she's behind the scenes, she knows everybody. And so I'll let you go on now, Desta, and tell about how we met and how you started this channeling thing, or how you identified to me about this channeling and how the world actually begins.
Well, that's a lot of stuff. Okay. I think it was 2015, I think. I had just moved to Vancouver to work a little bit, and because of course I was newly on meetups, and I saw that these meetups groups, there was UFO groups, and C5 groups and all this stuff. And I thought that nothing was ever happening in Winnipeg and no one was here and I had no one to talk about all this kind of stuff with. So I was quite happy to go to move back to Vancouver for a couple of years. I had been there when I was a little bit younger as well. And the first thing that happened when I moved there was the Disclosure Conference that Grant was speaking on. And I was just there by myself, sitting in the audience. He went up and started saying he was from Winnipeg and that there was a UFO group in Winnipeg. And I was so shocked. I don't think I had ever in my life gone up at any conference, concert, anything and randomly talked to a stranger because they said something. I've never done that in my entire life, but I was so shocked that Grant was from Winnipeg and I had just moved to Vancouver to kind of get to, you know, where more people were involved in this. And I was so shocked. I immediately went up to him after and I was like, "You're from Winnipeg? You were in a group at Winnipeg at U of W?" I was like, "This is like, I can't even believe it." And so I talked to you there and I had been, at the time I was kind of working like 2 months in Vancouver and then I'd come home for a month back to Winnipeg. So so I had told you that I was going to start coming to the UFO meetup group here in Winnipeg every third month when I was back at home for a month. And yeah, so then we met there. And I just remember for all the stuff we started doing together, I just remember saying, "You have like so much information in your head. It's crazy. How do you not have a YouTube channel? How is this not on Facebook? How are you not doing interviews constantly? Like we need to buy a video camera. We need to like sit you in a room and I'll ask you like 50,000 questions and we'll just cut it into a million bits and we'll put it on YouTube." And I had no idea how to do any of that, but I just thought it was crazy that that I didn't know about you before then, but I was on YouTube watching hundreds of different, you know, subscribing to hundreds of different channels and watching people talk all the time. And I thought like Grant's head is just filled with an enormous amount of stories and information. And I thought that everyone had to see it. So we slowly learned together how to do all putting everything out and getting a YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff. So that's
that people should realize that people see all that kind of stuff. That's actually Desta doing all that. I just sort of, I'm the dancing bear. When the camera goes on, I start doing it. But Desta runs the entire operation. So I'm very appreciative of that. So let's go to this download thing. And this gets into sort of your books, because your books are channeled material. And I was very fascinated in channeled material. And so we have this one conversation where you have a download just before you get up. It goes through the night. We have meet first thing in the morning in the St. Vital Mall, and you have this download. So tell that story.
So yeah, it was just a coincidence that it happened on the same day. So I had, I was waking up in the morning. I remember in those days I wasn't, I was too polite to tell you I don't wake up really in the morning. So we had to wake up to meet at like 10 o'clock or some time that I'm usually fast asleep. So I had my alarm set quite a few hours before to make sure that I would actually get up and be alive at that time. And so I couldn't sleep because I was anxious to make sure I wasn't going to miss my alarm. So I was like in and out of sleep or whatever. But I was trying to get back to sleep, you know, for another hour or two or whatever it was kind of thing before we went and met. And yeah, I had a download, I guess. I had a very strange thing happen where, so I was like alive. So this time, what it felt like was that it was a black, it wasn't even completely black. It was like a very dark brown. There was no light source or anything, but it was just like space. And I was alive. Of course, I wasn't a human being. I was a tiny bit of consciousness, as were there trillions of other tiny bits of consciousness, just in a black, you know, a very dark space environment, not with stars or planets or anything, just like, there was just like nothing. It was just like a soup of nothing. There was no humans around. There was no planets around. There was no language. There was no anything. So it was just like awareness. Everyone was like, you know, all the little bits of consciousness kind of thing was just pure awareness. So I was aware at one point, you know, and not looking through eyes or anything, but aware of what was happening, and what was happening was nothing. It was just, we were all in black, you know, in space or whatever. And then what felt like I went to sleep, you know, I was like not aware anymore for what was supposedly like millions of years. And then I regained awareness, kind of like looked around, sensed what was in the environment kind of thing. And there was a very small but black cube that was just, you know, darker than the dark brown soup we were in. It was like, it was a shape. It was a shape. And I didn't know what a shape was. You know, like I said, there was no English. I wasn't talking. I wasn't thinking in words. I was just like, shape, a dark shape in my head, or, you know, however you say it. And then I like, you know, was out of awareness again for another million or millions of years, and then kind of like came to awareness again, and the shape was growing. It was a black cube, and the black cube was growing, and it was getting bigger. And I had no concept of, you know, words or anything for what was happening. So went to sleep again or whatever, a million years, woke up again, and now it's a huge growing cube. So in how you could think, being a bit of consciousness, I was like, you know, like, what's happening? And a voice said, this is how all wars begin. And that was real words, but nothing else was actually in words. And I didn't really know what that meant. And then very, very slowly, and this is when I was kind of like waking up and trying to like unravel how to describe this thing that I was seeing. The meaning behind it, this is where all wars begin, is like, so all of the bits of consciousness that were around, and there was, you know, zillions of us, some people started wanting to separate out of the group. So we were all one, bits of consciousness all together as one, not having any thoughts or anything like that. But some of them wanted to start experiencing something else. So they started, their bits of consciousness started going, and they were grouping together. So all these different bits of consciousness who had a similar idea that they wanted to experience life, like, you know, in a long term, in like a trillion years kind of thing, there would eventually be a planet and we would all be human beings, and this is it. But this is like the very, very, very beginning before any of this happened. This is what was happening, is that different bits of consciousness were deciding, yes, I want to experience something different, separating from the group. And what it meant, this is how all wars begin, is when you're separating yourself out of the big cosmic oneness kind of thing, wanting to have a different experience, you're then seeing yourself as separate from everything else. And of course, that's where all wars begin, because then you're in the separate, the ego mind of being separate, and everything else is different. And of course, that's where all wars began. So that was the first main part of that whole thing, I guess. There's other weird things when I woke up after this, like when I was waking up in my room, I didn't actually recognize the room. I had no idea where I was, and I was still in the headspace of being this little tiny bit of consciousness. And as I like looked around my room, and I saw like windows and like the wall hitting the ceiling and stuff, I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what a window was. I had no idea what anything was except for the shape. I could like distinguish the shape because I had just been looking at this black cube, which I didn't realize was a black cube. But now that I'm in this room, I thought in my head, like, reverse cube. Like, because it's like I had no idea, but it felt like I was in the cube because I could see the painting of the room, and it looked like a cube, and I was inside the cube, and I was looking at my TV, which just looked like a rectangle. And I was looking at the windows, they just looked like rectangles. I looked at my dog on the bed. I had literally no idea what a dog was. I had no concept of what was happening. But I was 100% awake, and I sat up in bed, and I kind of like touched the dog, and I had no idea what was happening. And I looked through the bed, and there was water coming up, and there was water coming up, like as in I could see through into my basement through my bed, but it was not just my house that was being flooded with water, it was the entire planet. So it was like water rushing from ground level, just getting higher and higher and higher. And I had no idea what was happening. So I got out of bed, I don't know how, and I went to see where my dog was. But I didn't even realize I was going to see where my dog was. But I went, and I was trying to stick my hand inside of his kennel. So like, I guess, subconsciously knew that that's my dog, always sleeps, in a kennel if he's not on the bed. Went to to put my hand in the kennel, and there's like, of course, like a metal grated door, you know, like the door to the kennel. And I was trying to put my hand through the door to touch to see if the dog was in there, because I couldn't really see, because I didn't really know what was happening. I just instinctually was trying to figure out where the dog was because the water was coming, but I had no idea what was happening. I was trying to put my hand through the grated door, and it kept, of course, bumping into the door. And I was like, like, you know, because there's like no words still. So it's like, what's happening here? My hand is not going through this door. And eventually I figured out how to put my hand like around the door and to feel that the dog was, you know, my dog was in his kennel. But I was concerned because the water was coming, but I had no idea what was happening. I had no idea still that I was human. Somehow I knew that that was my dog, and I was looking for my dog to make sure he didn't drown. But it was like, the feeling of that whole thing was just like that the water is going to come, and the water was like going to basically get everything. And it took many more minutes until I finally was like, what is happening in here? And like, that's the dog, that's a crate, I'm Desta, this is a room, that's my TV. It took a long time. And then it took an hour for me just to figure out how to put in words about the black cube and this is how all wars begin. I had like, it was so hard to explain what that was because there was no words when it was happening. It was just the weirdest feeling and everything. And anyway, so I spent an hour trying to figure it out in bed, and then an hour writing it down. I'm like, oh my God, I got to go meet Grant. And it's still super early in the morning, and normally I would never be awake at that time or whatever. So it was just crazy.
Yeah.
It happened the same day, and I had a story to tell you.
That's exactly what I remember you telling me that story. And I was so sort of amazed by that, you know, here's this girl who's telling me this sort of like a download story, which is what I was into. And it was like, wow, I mean, that's like, wow, I did, you know, sort of won the lottery type thing. So we talked a long time that morning. And then just to segue, and I'll next question I'll give to Sinead. To segue, you had all this channeled material, and I would be asking you questions, ask them this, ask them that, and you didn't really want to do this. You didn't want to do the book thing. You were helping me do other people's books. We were helping, like we did help Nancy Tremaine put up a book. We helped a lot of people for no cost. We would help other people do books. You were helping me do my books, and yet yourself, you didn't want to be really a part of this. You didn't want to do the book, and I said, well, just put it in there. And so can you talk a little bit about the transition that you decide to do a book? And can you bring in your mother? Because your mother's a big part of this whole thing, that she works with you on this kind of stuff. And she actually traveled with us to Toronto the one time. But you do an awful lot of work with your mother in terms of books and stuff. So go through the transition of how you decided to actually do the book, because you didn't want to do any of these books for quite a long time, correct? And yet you have a lot of books. You have one of the biggest book collections I've ever seen.
Well, I definitely am interested in reading books. I have a science degree. I basically almost failed grade 12 English. I'm horrible at English. I'm horrible at speaking English. I'm horrible at writing English. I'm horrible. I basically paid my mom my entire life, even in university, even for some of my some of my labs that like my biochem lab, I remember we had to like write up you had to write, you had to do all the experiments, and I could do the experiments and I could figure out all the like technical, like science part and write it down. But when I had to like have the beginning, the summary, the middle, the end, and actually put it in an essay, I had to pay my mom my entire life. My mom has an English degree and a French degree. So she's good at that kind of thing, and putting essays and writing and stuff together. And I'm definitely not. So yes, I never in a million years wanted to put out a book or thought I could. I think that we talked about that when, I think it was when we went to Shasta, that time we drove to Shasta. We had been talking about some of the stuff that I was channeling. And then you said, bring some of it so we can, you could read it to me in the car or something. And it was huge. I had like, hundreds of pages of it. And you were like, oh my God, there's so much of that. Why don't you put it in a book? And I thought, I can't put it in a book. But yeah, I never thought that I didn't have to write very much if I could just cut it all up into different chapters and kind of put it out. That doesn't require me actually writing much if I explain that it's like verbatim and I'm just getting the message and here it is or whatever. So I never would have thought of putting it out. I never would have thought of anything. Like I said, I didn't even know at the beginning that I was channeling. I thought I was you know, and whatever that even means. But, you know, I assumed I was just talking to a different part of myself, and there was interesting message coming sometimes. And so it slowly evolved over the years. You asked me to ask them some questions as well. And someone else that we knew in Winnipeg here posted, when you posted something on Facebook, she, a woman that we both know here from Winnipeg, she said, ask Desta who she's talking to. And I just thought, who am I talking to? Like, I'm obviously just talking to my higher, like my subconscious, you know, Dolores Cannon, my subconscious. I had no idea that it was channeling. I thought it was just like fun little things that had some crazy information sometimes. And when she asked that, I thought, well, I'll ask. And you were always saying, ask them this, ask them this. And I'm like, I can't ask them things. That's not how this works. It's not like it's an actual thing answering it. You know, like I didn't know what was really happening. So, but I did ask. I asked who I was talking to, and different days they would say different things, and including things that I didn't believe in, like angels. For example, I never, like, of course I know about angels and I've heard about them or whatever, and I believe other people see their thing and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I didn't think that, you know, I never believed in stuff like that. So there was a lot of validation for myself that came from asking the beings some questions and getting answers that I would then Google to try and prove that it was wrong, that I was somehow just making it up and it wasn't really them talking. So there'd be different things that they would say, and there'd also be spelling mistakes too. Like they would say something sometimes and I would type something. The one I always remember is this one about Phoenicians. There was a message that they were talking about Babylon and being a Phoenician, and I'm like, I was about to go to Phoenix, Arizona in a couple of weeks. So I was like writing down Phoenix, and I thought that they were somehow referring to this Phoenix trip I was going on. And they're like, no, Phoenician. And I'm like, Phoenician, Babylonian. I'm like, what? I have no idea what this is. And so I still kept like going Phoenix, like rising from the ashes, Phoenix. And they're like Phoenician. And they were like typing it, like very strongly typing it. And I'm like, Phoenician. And I just kept thinking, oh, don't start thinking or you're going to get out of the zone kind of thing. But I was like, I don't know what a Phoenician is. And I was, you know, they were showing me these pictures of like the tops of these boats that look like Viking boats with these huge like carved things on the front. And I'm like, Phoenician sounds like maybe it's something that I've heard of at one point, but I wasn't really sure. But anyway, so yeah, so it took a long time to progress to, you know, how I do it now, or understanding what was happening, or if they were who they said they were, or whatever. But yeah, getting a lot of validation as well from Googling some of the messages, because I didn't really think that I was talking to other things. I didn't really think I was channeling. I didn't really understand any of that. So I can't even remember if that's what the question was.
Okay, Sinead, you can go ahead with your question.
Okay. Wow. First of all, that's just such a cool story, and this is a lot of fun already. So I thought it was kind of interesting. I just have a comment, and then I have a couple of questions. But it's kind of interesting how you were describing the experience of, you know, being in this black nothingness and being a spot of consciousness, and then how worlds start by these other little spots or bits of consciousness grouping together based on their intention, right? Based on like shared intention or shared, I'll just leave it at that. And that's kind of interesting because that behavior is mirrored on Earth. Like people group together based on intention also. And you were relating how that relates to the idea of separateness, and it so does, you know, like race or culture or religion or gender or whatever, we group together in these ways that then end up creating separation. So that was just kind of interesting. I was thinking about that. I would just also want to ask you something about the channeling experience that you had with the cube, because you said that, you know, you kind of woke up from it and didn't understand where you were, and there was water coming up everywhere. What do you think the water was about? Like, do you think there's a symbolism to that? Because there's a lot of water themes and symbolism generally when it comes to the idea of consciousness. So I'm wondering how you interpreted that experience.
Well, first about, I didn't say this part of the story, but this is one of the you know, to go along with the black cube kind of thing. I remember, you're totally right. It was like, and I can even say what it felt like, that it was like a magnet. This maybe sounds even crazier, but I mean, it felt like there was a magnetic pull based on everyone's intentions when different bits of consciousness was waking up and going like, oh, this is, it was like, you know, and it's like a group understanding or something, that everyone just understood that if you want to go this different route to be separate, then you go here, or you're magnetically pulled because of what you felt like you were the one. Because part of it was, I did remember thinking, why are those, like, again, without saying it in English, because, you know, I wasn't speaking English or whatever, I wasn't thinking in English, but I remember just thinking like, I'm never going there. Like, this is like warm and, you know, just like, it was like easy and peaceful and quiet and warm. I can't even like say all the things, but I remember just thinking like, I knew that if I wanted to go there, I could. And I knew that like you said, the cosmic understanding or intention of wanting to do something different, wanting to get the worlds working and start like creating something. But it was matter. They were creating matter. So this black cube was like the beginning of matter ever being created, which was going to eventually, in, you know, a ton of time, turn out to be what this is now, and how we're all separate and see ourselves as separate. But this was the very beginning of like matter, and the matter happened to start with the cube. So, but I just remember thinking like, that, no, like, I'm never doing that thing, like going, and because I knew what was happening without it being in English, like the feeling of it, I knew how to interpret the feeling, I guess is the thing. So so yes, so you're right about that. And yeah, the water, I don't know, again, I've had, I don't get, I know there's many people that get, you know, that channel and do different things like this and get different messages, and a lot of them are alarming and scary and all that kind of stuff. And I don't get stuff like that ever. Even if they're talking, they, like, a lot of the messages talk about like an ascending, you know, us ascending, or the shift, or waking up, you know, and waking other people up, and what our mission is and all that kind of stuff. But I don't get things like that. So whether it's because it comes in as, because my belief system and this is filtering it, or because the belief system they're telling me of what it's really like is filtering it, I don't know. But my thing is for the water coming in and potentially a destruction of the earth. And I do get messages about what has happened, and that this has happened a million times, but it is never fear-based. And that's possibly because I believe, and they tell me, these messages say that it is reincarnation, and we have been around for an infinite amount of time. We have an infinite amount of other realities that we're living in right now, our own selves.
And it's the natural order of things. It's the natural cycle of things. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so, like, trying to save people, or trying to, you know, do all these other things, or these big catastrophes are happening, it's like, we are going to die. That's not like something shocking to any of us, I hope. Like, we're only here for a limited amount of time. We're all going to die. We're all going to be reborn again. And it's happened an infinite amount of time. So it's like, there's no fear beyond. So I, like a long time ago, a message that I got, I remember them saying about, and this is like years ago, when maybe there was like, I want to say when there was like a bunch of hurricanes in Miami, or I don't know if that was 2 or 3 years ago or something, but one of the messages they said is like, you're never going to kill this planet. Like, you guys, and it's not like fleas off a dog's back. I know I've heard that before, but it was something like, Mother Earth, if she wants to shake things up, like, she'll shake things up. You guys will be gone. It's no big deal. You'll just come back in a different place, a different time. You're already living an infinite amount of parallel realities right now. So it's not like us dying, or there being a big catastrophe and a flood coming or something is like horrible, and you have to go and try and save everyone. It's like, this is what life is. This is what happens. We're in that 3D existence here. Like, this is cycles, and we're just going to come back as something else. And it's not like we're like so scared of death and scared of all this kind of stuff. And it never comes to me like that. So when the water was coming, I was not scared at all. I was scared for my dog. I was wondering if the dog, which is like a weird memory that I had, because I still was like not understanding anything at the time. I just wanted to make sure he wasn't downstairs where the water was coming up. So I was like looking for him to make sure he was around me, but I wasn't scared. But the water was coming. The water was coming, as in the water's coming all over the whole planet. And it's, I don't want to say wiping everyone out, but it was like, that was a scenario. I have no idea how that had to do with the black cube, because it was the exact, it was the same. I was still in the same frame of mind or whatever when it's happening, and it seems totally unrelated. And because I was in my room and looking, and and this other thing was like, trillions of years ago, beyond, before anything happened, before, matter was even around. So I have no idea what the link was. I have no idea. I do get waters, and I've dreamt about like drowning and tidal waves coming my entire life. And breathe, but I can always breathe in the water. Like for me, it's also not scary, because when I go in the water, it's like the dolphins and the whales are there, and I can always breathe, and I just like go and live with them, kind of thing. So I don't know if I don't have the fear of it because I like the beings in the water, or because that's how I died in a past life, or because that's a potential future. It's, I don't know at all. Sorry.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying about, how it was about the changing over of things, that the waters are just about the changing over of things, but it's not an ending. It's simply a continuation of things that have happened over and over and over again for eternity and always will. And, what you were saying about people getting so freaked out and fearful about catastrophes. I mean, of course, that's a natural kind of biological reaction, but it also comes from this very entrenched idea that we have that then that's the end, that there is an end, that endings are a thing. And endings are actually not a thing. Everything continues, regardless of if you're looking at something that's, in the microcosm of our own little individual lives, or if we're talking globally, or if we're talking universally, things never actually end. Things continue. So that makes a lot of sense. And it makes me think about what you're saying about having a science background, because it's funny that you didn't feel like you were good at writing and at speaking English. You said you're very good at speaking English, by the way. but that I'm not good at writing English. I'm not good at speaking English, and you have the science background, and then here you are doing all this writing and doing all this communicating and all this networking with people, and involved in helping Grant communicate, helping him do books and helping other people do books. And the YouTube is media communication and all. So now you're just fully in the realm of communication, right, in English. So what I'm curious about is, how does your science background, which is very practical and analytical, and that must come in really handy with all this, this crazy stuff that we're all involved in. I find it really useful personally to have a practical organizational mind, along with this deeply spiritual stuff that we know is also equally real, right? So how do you see the partnership of your science background and that practical mindset that you have, how it pairs with now all this communication that you're doing, and overlapping both, the channeling and the personal spiritual experience that you have?
Well, I have to say I'm really skeptical about other people's experiences, but very much for myself. And I've had many sightings, like UFO sightings over the year. I've had many strange things happen throughout my life, and I'm the first person that doesn't believe, even when it's happening, even when it's like, I had a very close encounter in 2012, which is what I thought maybe all the channeling and all this kind of stuff maybe stemmed from. But I had many other experiences and orbs and, like all kinds of things. But even the very, very close encounter I had in 2012, as it was coming, and I was calling it and it was coming, I just kept thinking, this is in 2012. So like, I had heard the word drone before, but I didn't really know what a drone was. So I was just thinking like, I said, come here to this thing that looked like it was like very obviously not just a plane. It was like, bobbing in the sky kind of thing. And I'm like, if you're a UFO, come here. And it instantly started coming. And I'm just like, oh, that's so weird. Because so it's like a drone, there's kids in the neighborhood, it's coming right for me. And even when it was coming and it came all the way up to 50 feet away from me and sat on top of this elementary school just outside my house here. And as it was there, stopped, I was just thinking like, so are there kids in the neighborhood? Where could they have been standing? And how far can their, like, I don't know, remote control, I don't know how drones work, but I'm like, do they have like a little remote control? And, it was so far away. It took like 10 minutes just to come over to me. So where is that person standing? And how do they know that I'm standing here? Because it came from like 100 miles away kind of thing. And I'm like, I didn't believe it the whole entire time. And I had like time stand still and slow down, and my body, like I had all these crazy things happen, and everything went silent and everything. And the whole entire time I was just thinking like, what is, like, I wasn't thinking it's a UFO. I'm thinking like, what in the world is happening? Like, what is this? So yeah, I'm definitely, and especially with the channeling, and that's maybe the reason it took me like years until I trusted enough that I can ask questions and it makes sense. But and many channeling, especially when they correct my spelling of something, I instantly, I go to bed right after. I used to channel right before I went to sleep. And the next day when I would read it, I would go like, this is crazy. Like it, when I channel, it really feels like, another thing, this is part of the skeptical thing maybe, is that it really feels to me like I'm making this whole thing up myself, because it doesn't feel surprising. Nothing is surprising. It just feels like, oh, I know this. This is so obvious and so boring. I'm like boring myself typing, like, we're all one. And they always say things like that. And I'm just like, this is like, I don't know. I just feel like I know everything that they're saying, and it's so obvious. It just feels boring. And I don't know. So it's not until a couple days later when I thought, oh, I did a couple channelings and they didn't go well. I don't think I connected with anything. I didn't feel good about it. And then I'll go back and read it. And I'll be like, holy crap, I've never heard this before. And I have like 100 screens open, on my laptop. So I go into the next screen and I start typing every single thing that they're saying. And I'm trying to either line up timelines, like that Phoenician thing. They had like jackals or something in it. And I'm like, is jackals even in Babylonian? What year was this? And they're talking about an oracles and these boats. So I was like looking up pictures of the boats, looking up, did Phoenicians use oracles? Were jackals even alive in those days? Did they have a dog that was called a jackal? I look up everything. I have a million screens open and I don't believe it. So every time I validate something, I'm like, okay, well, let's see the next thing. Let's see the next thing. Let's validate the next thing. And it's like, I don't believe it. I just don't ever believe it. So I know there's something happening because they correct the spelling. They're saying crazy things, and I get good messages about other people. And I've helped in, some cold cases and stuff where there's other people that are, trying to help get information on missing people and stuff like that. And we all have very similar stuff. So it's even validating amongst other people that are either remote viewing or channeling or mediums, all that kind of stuff. And so it's like validating, but I still almost never believe it's happening after it happens or anything like that. The only reason I'm putting the books out is because they say that it connects to different people. And I had, a handful of people that, say that it's means something to them and it's, important. So I'll put it out, but it's like, I almost still don't really believe it until I can keep getting the validation. And then I still almost don't believe it. So
then how useful is that then? I mean, that's a great marriage of perspectives, because you've got the healthy skepticism, but not the complete closed-mindedness, right? Like the skepticism with the open-mindedness, and then the organizational skills, looking at timelines and doing research to validate was a jackal a real thing at this time? And then it is extra validating, but also I do understand why you're skeptical, because the ego is such a tricky, manipulative thing. And it's so easy for us to want to go, oh, this incredible magical thing is happening to me. And now I'm super special because this incredible magical thing is happening to me. And now I can tell everybody how special I am and how special this is. Like, that's really tempting for a lot of people to have an experience, or think they're having an experience, or manufacture an experience for themselves. So I totally hear you on that. I think we have to be very careful, to make sure that we are healthily skeptical without completely closing the door of possibility, because we want to continue to expand our consciousness, but do it in an intelligent, informed way. And so that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like your science background and all this crazy communication stuff is a perfect marriage. So that's fantastic. And actually, on that note, maybe Grant wants to say something about skepticism and rationality, being a researcher and being somebody who spends so much time collecting facts and details. Is anything coming up for you regarding Desta's work in that respect, Grant?
Well, the way I always see skepticism is the left brain. It's the little voice in your head saying, well, no, maybe it's something else. It's like when the world becomes inconsistent, you have what's called a left brain interpreter that immediately jumps in and tries to make the world consistent again. So I always have, that's sort of my view on skepticism. What I want to ask Desta is about, what's your definition? Because you and I have talked about this a lot on different trips. And for people who don't realize, Desta's talking about doing these timelines and having 20 windows open. I mean, I've been with her in a car where, I mean, she's on the cell phone and she's booking a room and looking up stuff, and it's like just like going like crazy. I mean, she's an unbelievable ability to multitask on a computer or on a cell phone. But we've talked about a lot of people who do channeling, and there's all these channelers. So give me your definition of channeling. And you told me one time you've done a lot of courses, which a lot of people don't realize. You've done healing courses, you've done remote viewing courses, you've done all sorts of courses, and you were trying to learn to do this. And at one point you told me the story of how they helped you. They actually said, this is what it feels like. Can you go through that story, how they actually put you in a position where you suddenly realized, oh, this is how it's done?
Yeah. Well, for meditating, I mean, I've been meditating. My parents are huge researchers of different kind of religions, and really into Buddhism and Hinduism and everything, but meditating a lot as well. And so I've been meditating my whole life. So I maybe knew how to meditate properly, or however, whatever that actually means. But when I was in Vancouver, so maybe the same year that I met you, or maybe the year before, I was trying to do an out-of-body class, kind of like I was trying to do the out-of-body class at the same time that I was doing the Dolores Cannon, like learning the QHHT. And I was seeing a big link in theta state. I was like obsessed with the theta state at the time. There was also a class called Theta Healing that I didn't take the class, but I bought all the books, and I was like really into like the theta state, thinking that a lot of experiencers that have the beings visit them in the middle of the night or whatever, this is while they're in the theta state. I've had many things in my room. I have crazy hypnagogic and hypnopompic experiences constantly my entire life. And so I just think I was like really obsessed, thinking that it all had to do with theta, being in the theta state, which is of course the state that everyone is in right before you go into delta, before you actually fall asleep. And the QHHT session, you're trying to make sure the person is like down as possible. And Dolores is supposed to have one of the, one self-proclaimed, but I mean, she says that she can bring her people to a really, really deep state, and it's theta, and she says that it's theta. And so I was taking this out-of-body experience class. So I was doing the thing every night for weeks, the mind awake, body asleep. So, so as you do it, that it says in your head, it says roll over. You're trying to stop the rollover. So you have to ignore when your body says roll over. You have to pretend that you have to keep your mind awake the whole entire time while your body goes to sleep. And as your body goes to sleep, it feels like, they say it feels like, and it does feel like, at the dentist, they put the lead blanket when they're going to do x-rays of your mouth or whatever, they slowly roll the lead blanket over. So you're supposed to be awake, your mind awake, while your body is falling asleep, which feels like this lead blanket going over you. And I was doing that for weeks. I was up all night for weeks. And mind awake as that goes down. And then, that's when a lot of people say that they get the witch on their chest, and, they see the shadow people. And I've seen shadow people. And like I said, I have crazy, a lot of hypnopompic and gogic things happen to me. But I would feel it like, oh, here it comes. The lead blanket is coming. I'm going to be able to get out of my body this time. And then my whole body would be paralyzed. I couldn't move. I could open my eyes. I couldn't move my head. I could open my eyes. I saw, a handful of things, nothing that, people freak out and are super scared of. I've never had a scary thing like that. But I saw some things, and my body was paralyzed, but I couldn't get out. I just kept trying to get out. And then because I was taking the QHHT at the same time, and that's when you're down in theta enough that you can't think anymore. That's when we're, as a practitioner, supposed to be saying to the person, can I speak to Desta's higher self or Desta's subconscious? And that's when you're supposed to be able to get this good connection. So as my body is paralyzed and I can't get out of my body, so I can't do the out of body experience part, but I am thinking, oh, well, my mind is so quiet now. My body's paralyzed. Like I could be, like some people seeing all these crazy things in the room and getting attacked and strangled and all this stuff. But why don't I try and talk to my higher self now? This is maybe the best time, because I'm like definitely as like calm and meditative as you could possibly be. Like I'm like literally my body is paralyzed. And I started trying to say like, hello, like, can someone answer some questions for me? Or, you know, I didn't know what to even be saying. And I was getting really frustrated. So I was doing this night after night for a few weeks, and not getting any sleep, but being paralyzed all night and not being able to even talk to anything. So I'm like, you know, like screaming to the world kind of thing one night, like, how is this theta state supposed to happen? How do you get to the connection where I can start talking to my subconscious or my higher self? Like, I'm trying so hard. I am awake the whole night, but I can't get on my body and I can't talk to myself. So like, for God's sake, someone help me, screaming to the universe. And literally like an hour later, so I was awake, like I was awake all night, every night, my mind 100% awake. And about an hour later, I did get a crazy experience where multiple beings came and said, oh, you want to know how this whole thing works? You want to get into theta? We're going to show you how to get into theta. And they, like, inside my head, they said, they were trying to show me, because I was like all obsessed with theta and the brainwave state. So they showed me, like, I can't even explain it, but they turned down, as in a big volume knob, like on an old, you know, 70s stereo system or whatever. They turned down, but I could see and feel them turning down my brainwave state till I got to theta. So I saw the knob turning down, but what I felt, the feeling of the thoughts leaving your head. And it felt like I was going, you know, down these concrete stairs into like the middle of the earth kind of thing. And it was getting quieter and quieter and quieter and quieter as I was descending, as they were turning down my brain wave and then brainwaves. And then when they did, they said, to get to theta, you need to be theta. And be theta, this is what theta feels like. So as they turned it down, and I felt like I was, you know, at the bottom of the flight of stairs, kind of in like a concrete, you know, parking lot in the middle of the earth or something. I was so completely, my mind was so insanely empty and quiet, but I was so awake. Like, I was so awake and aware and felt like so connected, but with just like zero, like with nothing, no sound, no thought, no anything, but alive and aware and awake. And I'd never ever felt like that before. Even meditating, when you can get to the place where that never felt, that doesn't, no matter how good I can meditate, I never get to the place I get to when I go channeling is different than the meditative state. And maybe it's because I never thought of meditating in a place where you're super aware and not, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain it. But anyways, so they brought me to this thing, and I felt like they said, you want to be in theta, this is what theta is. You have to be the state of nothingness, but pure awareness, and no sound, no distractions, no thoughts, you know, all that. So they brought me to the place, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I totally get it. I totally get it. So the very next night that I did it, I got to that place very, very quickly, because I understood what it felt like, instead of just someone, you know, saying all these words in a bunch of books telling you what you're supposed to feel like when you're meditating. To actually feel that state, I did it the next night. And that night was the first night that the you know, things started answering back, and I was awake all night in this body paralyzed, mind awake, talking to things, going, okay, so when I was like, you know, 13 years old, my boyfriend at the time did all these horrible things to me. So what does that mean? You know, where did he come from, or why was I in this relationship? Okay, when I was 15 and this crazy thing happened, why? I went through my entire life and kept asking these questions. And I was getting answers, any answer I wanted of anything that had to do with me or anything else. It felt like the second I asked the question, I was just connected with the answer of everything. Any question that I wanted, no matter what it was about me, the universe, how time works, it doesn't matter. I would ask the question, and it was just like, I knew the answer to everything instantly. And I was like, wow, this is exactly, but then eventually you fall asleep. And then you wake up and it's like, oh my God, I had the most amazing night. I could never remember anything, like anything. It took months and months and months until I could at least remember one thing. I would go over and over and over and over one thing like 100 times, hoping that I could remember one thing. But I was up for months all night asking questions, every question that I could think of, and I got all the answers, but I never could remember it. So yeah, so anyways, again, it took a very long time to come to the point of where I could, you know, type it, get to the place or whatever, but they definitely did help, because I did not understand what that state of awareness and nothing of yourself is left at that point. They definitely, whoever they are, you know, they definitely helped.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions related to all of that.
Sorry.
So you are mentioning two things. You're mentioning that, you know, you tried really, really, really hard for a very long time to get to a point where this could occur, right? And then you're also saying that everything that you experienced, the knowledge and understanding, even if you couldn't remember it, the knowledge and understanding that you experienced as a result of that was far more than you could have gotten out of any books that you could have read, right? So pairing those two kind of things together, I have two questions. So one question is, after all that hard work that you did, you know, all those nights of doing this practice and trying to get to this place, and then finally these beings show up and say, you know what, you've been working so hard, we're going to help you out a little bit, right? Do you have any recommendations for anyone who also wants to get to that pure theta state where they can have this experience? Do you feel like everyone needs to work that hard, you know, that that you just have to, it's like a trial that you have to be really committed to in order to get to a point where you can do this? Do you have any recommendations for people who would want to be able to get there, not necessarily faster, but more effectively? And then do you have any book recommendations, you know, any books that you feel would kind of cut to the chase that could be really useful for people in this regard?
Well, I don't have this planned here, but this happens to be right here. So I'll show you something that was one of the main things. I mean, binaural beats, in my first book, I actually thought that a lot of people might want to be doing this. And I think it's really so easy. And I've read zillions of books, you know, on all kind of things like this, even just getting to the state, even if it had nothing to do with channeling. And I don't think that I ever read anything that had anything to do with how I actually ended up learning it, which I think is easier than everything that I've ever read before. But yeah, I don't know if people really want to do it. So anyways, I did write a tiny bit in my first book, but the main thing is this. It's called a biotuner. This is made in Canada. And I think it's in Nanaimo, actually. Kelowna. The company is called Sota Instruments, S-O-T-A Instruments. There's this guy called Bob Beck. There was like a Bob Beck protocol for cancer, you know, for people that I was researching a bunch of stuff about cancer. I was going to write a book about like a lot of the, you know, natural things that you can do if you get diagnosed, so you're not, you know, so people aren't so freaked out or whatever. And Bob Beck was one of the big people that I was following. So he developed, say, like 5 different instruments, and it's for curing cancer is his main thing. But this company, Sota Instruments, got the schematics from him and worked with him before he passed. I'm pretty sure he passed, and they sell it for very cheap. So anyways, this biotuner is it's just like alligator clips that you put on your ears. It's kind of like binaural beats. They actually send I won't open it, but they send the Schumann resonance as well as one other. So there's 2 different frequencies that they're sending through these like electrical, like very slight electrical shocks that you're getting through alligator clips that you clip to your ears. And they've developed this for addicts. So it's for alcoholics, drug addicts, people that are struggling with any kind of addiction, really. And Pete Townsend of The Who, you know, is apparently in the 70s or something, was like cured of his heroin addiction, apparently, from using this instrument when it like came out at the very beginning. So it modulates your brain signals, obviously through the corpus callosum. So both sides of your head are getting the same kind of stimuli. So it's kind of like modulating the frequencies and controlling proper stimulation on both sides, from going through both sides of your ear. So and through stimulation instead of through the frequency of sound. So this stimulation, instead of it coming through like hearing the Schumann resonance, it's electrical stimuluses that are going through your ears with the Schumann resonance, as well as one other thing. So it's like 110 I know Steve Mera talks about 110, 111 hertz frequency, which is in a lot of the healing chambers, underground chambers, and a lot of the ancient sites. So it's a healing resonance as well as the Schumann resonance that actually goes to your head. Anyway, so you can there's a handful of different levels that you can kind of use on this, and I don't even remember if it was $150-ish, $100 or $200 anyways, but this is
Can I ask you a question on that actually?
Mhm.
Why the ears? Is that because it's somehow connected to the central nervous system, or like what's that about?
Well, I can't really remember. I haven't read up on it in many years, but it's supposed to be for, like, this specific thing is supposed to be for addicts. So it's supposed to be changing depression and anxiety. They built this for depression and anxiety to change the frequency that your brain, or obsessive compulsive disorder, things that where your brain can't get out of the regular, pattern that it does. It's breaking the pattern and modulating and trying to connect both sides of your brain at the same time to try and like calm yourself down and stop the breaking, and like Grant talks about too, and I'm very interested in is a lot of the microdosing on psychedelics as well now, and it's the same thing. It's breaking patterns that you've set up yourself through your brain. So whether you're obsessively thinking that you need to drink, obsessively depressed, so you just keep being depressed, obsessively anxious, so you just can't break the cycle of whatever it is that you're looped into. So this biotuner is supposed to do the same kind of thing that the microdosing is, which is just breaking the pattern and trying to like help you modulate and, like, I don't know, have better general health with your brain chemistry and with the I don't know, the thoughts that you're having.
So I guess the ears are just, because it's about changing the brain and the way the brain is operating on both sides of the brain to have that balance going. It makes sense to use the ears because they're the closest thing that those things can latch onto that is close to the brain.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like why specifically is it the ears?
I'm wondering, does it have to do with sound, or is it about it just being locally close to the brain? What do you think that's about?
Good question, because they do have another thing that's like a micro, you can make colloidal silver with one of the other machines, and you can actually they run stimulus through you, just have like a wet wristband kind of, excuse me, and it's the same thing where it's running micro stimulation through you that's supposed to be getting into your blood to be cleaning your blood. So I don't actually know why it would be the ears. Yeah. But it is the frequencies like binaural beats, which you're supposed to be, inputting the frequencies in your ears. But why is it a stimulation instead of the actual sound? Actually, I don't know.
Okay, well, it makes sense. I mean, if it's electrical currents, it does make sense to me that they would have to be close to the brain for the purposes of that particular machine. So that makes a lot of sense. So that's great that you're recommending this. That's incredibly helpful. I have it written down. I'm going to order this myself immediately after we hang out, probably. So binaural beats and the biotuner and
but this biotuner, it can bring biotuner. So it brings me to the exact same place. So how Grant talks about the muse. My parents have one. I've used that a handful of times as well. That's really good for a different kind of part of it where you can train yourself how it feels. The muse is good for training yourself how it feels, so you can be aware of how it feels for your brain to be empty. So the muse is good for that, but this thing in 20 minutes, in my opinion, or because of my past experience with everything that happened to me, this thing, you put it on and it brings you in 20 minutes. It brings me down further than anything I've used. And I used binaural beats for years. I subscribed and paid a ton of money to some of those, to some of the original iDozer. We used to, you could buy different packs of, from iDozer, different packs of, you could do mushrooms or LSD, or they had tons of things like base chakra, root chakra, out-of-body experience, lucid dreaming. They had thousands of different kind of states, every kind of drug you could imagine. And they were trying to, and in the lab, they did a lot of research trying to get people to different states, whatever the state was, whether it was a drug-induced state or a specific chakra state, or, whatever. They were trying to get people to very specific levels. And I used those for a long, long time. And they worked well sometimes, But this biotuner, for me personally, this is like, not only does it bring you to that very specific state very, very, very quickly, the bottom of the parking garage kind of state where there is nothing else and you're just alone with that. But for anyone that has any of these other problems, it's actually, you know, helping you in a healthful way as well, trying to reorganize your structured patterns of what your brain's already doing that, you know, could be detrimental in some way if you have any of these kind of problems. So yeah, I definitely recommend this. But the main thing for channeling, I'll just say very quickly, is you get to the place, once you get to the place of where you have no thoughts in your head, all you have to do is listen. And so if you go into a meditation with one question and you just keep saying the one question in your head over, like, I want to know if should I take the job? Should I take my new job? Or whatever your one question is, like, should I marry this person or whatever? Just have the one thought, go into the meditation, wait until there's nothing left, and then listen. But listen with the intention of listening for the answer to your question. And if you start like that and you have no thoughts in your head and you are listening with an unexpected answer, like with something in mind, so they have something to work with, like at the beginning, so you're wanting one answer to one question, then I think that starting like that. But the main thing is have no thoughts in your head and then listen, wait and listen, and don't do anything, just wait and listen, wait and listen, wait and listen. And there's, you know, I don't know, that for me, that's all it is. It's very, 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 very easy. You just have to know how to get to that, how to get to that state, and then wait and listen. And if it doesn't happen, you just keep waiting, like wait for a month or a year or whatever, but wait and listen and be open to it and have a question, so they have something that they know how to communicate back with you about. And whether it's your higher self or your angel, your guide, your Pleiadian, you know, it doesn't matter who's answering back. That's not the point at all. And they say that to me all the time. So even when I do ask, sometimes they say it's not the point. It doesn't matter who it is that's answering back, right? If it's good information, it's good information. And if it's only for you, it's only for you. And if it's to share with other people or whatever, but it doesn't matter what it is that's answering back. And who knows if these things are what's answering back, if that is really what they are anyways. It could just be our perception of, I got a good quote, hopefully, that someone else will like, but from Bashar in a very recent discussion he did that I actually put in this book, because someone asked a question like about the Melchizedek order, beings in a Melchizedek order, and they were saying to Bashar, like, is this true? Like, are these beings really the Melchizedek order or whatever, or is my friend who's getting this information? And Bashar basically said, like, you know, we're not saying that the person is getting bad information, but we would not see them as the Melchizedek order. They are going to tell you they are from the Melchizedek order because you're interested in that, and they're as closely aligned to your perception of what you think the Melchizedek order is. It doesn't mean so, and that's really, I'm so interested in, like, what exactly it is behind the phenomena. Like, what are these things? Are they aliens or spirits or ghosts? And if they tell you that they're Jesus, are they really Jesus? Or are they going to say that for 10 years? Because there's a million stories like that, right? They say that there's something for many, many, many years, and people are very attached to the being that they're talking to, and then the being comes and says that they were never that. And time is nothing to them, so it doesn't matter. So it was a huge struggle for me for like almost a year, wondering if I should be channeling anymore, because how do you know that they are what they say they are? But like I said, I think the main thing of that is, or what Bashar is saying, is that maybe they are lying and that isn't what they are, but there's no way that you can conceive of what they are. So they're going to say that there's something closely related to what you think that they are, because it's the only way they can communicate with you. And it doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter what exactly they are, because we can't conceive of what this other thing even is. And so for us to be so, and that, like we were saying before, for so many people to be so attached to, like, well, I'm talking to whatever, Mary, I talk to Jesus every day or whatever, and these people get these big egos because they're talking to something. But it's for me, I'm always so skeptical, because you don't know that being is what they're saying that they are. And for you to have a one step up on everyone else because you think you're talking to this thing that's maybe not even what it is, for me, that's a huge thing. And I didn't know if I should be channeling anymore, because it is such an ego thing, and because we don't know what it is. But I guess the message was, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's good information and it resonates with you and it helps someone else, then who really cares, right? People can believe in whatever they want to believe in with channeling, and buy the book or don't buy the book, or, you know, go pay someone a ton of money if you want to follow that one person. But the thing is, if it's going to help you, then that's as good as we can hope for, to get a little bit of help and to comfort some people who need it at whatever time. So it doesn't really matter what it is, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, Grant wants to make a comment, but I'm going to be nosy and just jump in ahead of him really quickly, because I have to respond to what you just said, because I so relate, and that makes complete sense to me. I mean, I have the same experience, and when I get my own messages, I've been saying this to Grant for a while now, and I felt this way since the beginning of my own experience, that I don't actually care what they look like or who they are. I don't actually care, because all I care is that I'm connected with them and they're giving me incredibly helpful, useful information that has completely changed my life and makes me feel amazing, and has opened up my mind, has opened up my heart. I mean, that's all I care about. It's just the raising of vibration, the raising of consciousness. I don't care about the labels. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying about your initial download, you know, with the black cube being in that black space where you just felt at home and you felt warm and wonderful. And it was only when all the points of consciousness start grouping together according to you know, their intention, that the separateness begins. And we see separateness here on earth, right? And how problematic it is, how incredibly problematic it is, and how pointless it is, right? So I really identify with what you said, and I'm also a huge Bashar fan, so I love that you brought that up as well. And now I'm going to zip it so Grant can speak.
I'm a huge Bashar fan too, and Sinead and I will actually be seeing him on August the 20th. We have an appointment to see him. I want to make a comment again. This is, I think, an important point that Desta is making about this, who we're actually dealing with. One of the quotes that just recently came up was the idea where they said, if you believe in the devil, your higher self will appear as the devil, because if he appears as an angel, you're not going to believe him. It'll appear as exactly what you want to appear as, because that's what you're going to listen to. And maybe you can make a little comment, Desta, but I want to make first I'll make a comment, and then I want to ask you just a little short question about Chris, our friend in Malibu, California, because he talked about this as well. He talked about this fact that that's what they had told him. When we come to you, we look through your head, and we figure out if you're in fear, we're going to use fear and this kind of thing. You can tell that story. But I want to basically just say it, because I've been watching you now, and I've known you for a long time. You're always afraid to come on and talk. I mean, you are as eloquent as Danny Sheehan. And I was thinking, as I was watching you, I'm thinking, maybe Danny Sheehan's Irish, you're Irish, you've got Danny Sheehan's hair. Maybe that's what it is. Because, I mean, you are absolutely eloquent. I mean, you have as much knowledge as I have in my head, and you are very well spoken. So you should be doing, I think, more speaking engagements and more interviews. You're extremely good. So I'll just pass it to you to talk a little bit about our friend Chris, because he made that same sort of point, and he's getting it from a completely different thing. Like, he's got this alien who's talking in his head and stuff like that, and yet he's got the same message as you had.
So sorry, so what's the question then?
The one about Chris, about to relate what Chris had been told about, you know, where they say they come into your head and tap your head and use that material.
Yeah, I think that's and I was so happy to get that Bashar quote very recently, because I had a lot of help, like basically all of the help that you can imagine, writing the only chapter in my book that actually is written. I had help from a very good friend of mine in Australia, and who is on this same topic of all this kind of stuff. But that's what we talk about all the time, is like, how do you know? And Steve Mara, of course, was a big help for me, trying to figure out what exactly is this behind the phenomena. What is it? What are they doing? And how can we trust that it is what it says it is, especially with so many different channelers getting so many different messages, and it very obviously being that different people have different filters and belief systems. And so you never know if they're reading your mind and telling you back exactly, reflecting exactly what you think, and that's the reason that you're communicating. And that's what I wonder as well about some people that are getting very fear-based messages. You wonder if they're very fear-based, and so they're attracting beings that are mirroring their own fear. And because, or it's an ego thing, of course. And so they're attracting beings that are going to give them a big ego by saying, I'm, Jesus, or whatever. And so you're talking to Jesus now. And so that person gets like, yes, I am talking to Jesus. I am the one. Everybody come and follow me because I have the big connection here. And it's very disconcerting for me, trying to be very skeptical, but trying to connect and trying to get these messages when you see all this other thing, which could be called the circus, right, of other people just so caught up in their own thing, and you don't know who to trust. And Bashar has been for many, many years for me a big one. So I was very happy to get that piece of information from him, where it's basically like how you're saying with Chris. So Chris, that they did say that they basically said that they scanned him and know exactly what his thoughts are, and basically are using that as information and how they can relate to them. And that's basically what that Bashar quote said as well, is they have to use some kind of interaction with you. And and what I was getting from Steve Mara is that you don't know if they're lying, because you do hear things like that all the time, where beings are talking to people for decades sometimes, and then it finally turns around and says, I was never Enki, I'm Enlil, or I was never Mother Mary, I'm a demon, or whatever it is. It's like, so what's the point in doing it then? What's the point in doing it, trying to channel, trying to connect with something, if you never know if it's going to be lying to you or not? But this Bashar one just like was my favorite one, and I only found it like 2 weeks ago. And it's my favorite one because they're basically saying that maybe they are kind of lying, but it's only because, and I have a handful of messages that are so complicated to write down, because they're trying to say, especially the machine elves. I'm like obsessed with Terence Mckenna and these machine elves. And so I channeled about it quite a few different times to try and say, like, are the machine elves the same kind of thing? Are the machine elves that people are seeing when they're doing psychedelics, but they're all seeing the same beings that look the same, that give them the same message, that are doing the same things, dribbling jewels, and singing out things, and then the things that they're making with their song are new beings that start singing out things which are dribbling jewels and all this kind of crazy stuff. And I was just really thinking, like, the machine elves, I think, are the same thing. Is it aliens? Is it spirits, demons, ghosts, angels, your guides, your higher self, Palladians, or machine elves? Is it all the same things? And it's just a mask that all of the phenomena is just trying to either reflect how you feel, reflect your own feelings, or give you what you want if you're very ego-based? Or are they trying to give you messages? Are they your guides? Are they your future self? Like Bashar, a future you that's trying to help you, coming back from the future into the past to try and help you along your own way. And it's just information for yourself, for your own evolution or whatever. And so it's so fascinating to me anyways, like what exactly this thing is. But I do think, like Chris said and Bashar said, is that they have to have a starting place, and their starting place is to read your mind, to kind of see where you're coming from, and then use the words that you would use to connect with you. And so like you're saying, Sinead, as well, so whether that thing is Jesus or a Syrian or whatever, it doesn't matter at all. And so what the phenomena is, I don't know if it matters at all. And if it's a machine elf, are you really going to this different place or whatever? It's like, it's, from what they say to me anyways, it is so insanely complicated. We are so far away from understanding what they are, that whether it's one being that is masquerading as all these different things, we are so far away from being able to understand it that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because if you're getting good information, like you said too, or like how Chris is saying that they're reading his mind and trying to give him, the personal stuff back to him, it doesn't matter, because that's what you're looking for. In my opinion, you're looking for a connection for your own personal self. And as long as you can keep your ego out of it, so you're not trying to be the next Messiah that like is speaking to the greatest thing in the world and everyone come follow me kind of thing. It's you're getting it for your own personal evolution or ascension or something to make you grow or whatever. And so it doesn't matter what it is. And I don't think we're ever in our lifetimes, I don't think it's going to be like a very, 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 very long time till we even understand what the other side is and what the connection to where these things are and what they are and how they're trying to interact with us. We're like, very, very far way along from being able to figure that out. But I think that is what they're doing. Yeah, they have to start somewhere. So they're reading your mind, and they're trying to connect with you.
Relatable, right? They have to be relatable. They have to make themselves relatable, because otherwise we're not going to be able to connect with what they're trying to give us. It's like anything else, you know. I mean, all teachers, all professors have to think about, okay, I have all this information, I've learned all this stuff. You know, how can I make this palatable to my students? Because the students have to be able to connect with the information. You can't just deliver it. It has to be delivered in a way that is a pathway for learning, right? And so that makes a lot of sense to me. And I was thinking too about how, you know, here on Earth, I mean, when you meet someone that you really like, and you have a joyful experience of meeting another human being or an animal, right, that you feel joy with, that you feel connection with, you feel like you recognize them, whatever the experience is, does it really matter if they're from Nigeria, or if they're Peruvian, or if they're South African? Like, it actually really does not matter at all. The body and the form and the labels and the names are, to me, are completely irrelevant. It's about the connection. It's about the connection. It's about the information. It's about the heart. It's about the consciousness, you know, like that's really all that matters. And that's where all the value lies ultimately, you know. Like, even if we were talking about people who receive messages for decades from a being that they've developed a relationship with, that they feel like they know the being has identified itself, and then later on it's like, oh, whoops, I was actually just kidding, you know, I'm not really that being. But does that completely devalue all the information, all the learning and the knowledge and the guidance? You know, not at all. It doesn't at all. So all of that remains true, all of that remains valid, and it still enriches the life and the consciousness of the person who received it, regardless of how they perceive that they're being. So I really feel you on that. And I have to ask a question on what you said. Just for the audience who's listening right now, can you just briefly explain what is a machine elf? Because I'm sure there's some people that are listening going, what? Machine elf? Like elves that live in machines? What is this? So can you explain what that is?
Well, Terence Mckenna, so he's like people that are interested in psychedelics, I'm sure know who he's like, the godfather, I guess, kind of our time or whatever. I think he died in maybe 2000-ish, but in the 70s and 80s, he was very, you know, he was the big person to go see. He's done thousands and thousands of lectures. There's so much information on YouTube, it's crazy. And he is my favorite person to listen to if you're ever like not in a great mood or need to be, you know, have a little bit of, he is so hilarious. He's so intelligent, and he is so, I don't know, I'm madly in love with everything that he does and everything he says. But so machine elves are the being that he coined the term machine elves, because they're like elf-ish, but they're like robotic-ish. So like made out of kind of machines. So he says that, and you know, the thousands, hundreds of thousands, I don't know, but most people who do DMT specifically, or psilocybin mushrooms, who take enough that they break through the veil, kind of what they say, will meet these beings, but everyone sees them as the same thing, is the crazy thing. It's not like, you know, if you go to a seance or if you're channeling or whatever, everyone sees something different. You're seeing a different thing based on, or even if you're going to see an alien, you know, some people will see an angel because they're you know, they're very religious, or some people will see, you know, you see different things based on, and whether that's the being presenting themselves to you as your belief system because they're reading your mind first. But the crazy thing with the machine elves is everyone who's doing this specific type of psychedelic, they're seeing the exact same thing. They're all seeing the machine elf. They all look the same. And so that really was making me wonder, then are you very specifically going to a specific place? So, and you know, of course they could say that the pineal, so when you do DMT, because it's produced there, you go through a portal, you know, some people will say that you go through a portal in your pineal and you're going, and Terence Mckenna said that where you were going, he felt like he was underground, like he was in the earth, underneath the earth somewhere, and the machine elves were there. And he was postulating, he was wondering if the DMT brought you to a very specific place where those machine elves were. Machine elf is really just the being that you see, that he always says is like dribbling jewels and gold and marbles and Fabergé eggs and all these like very intricate, shiny, swirling things that would then, and he said that they sing matter into existence. So he would say, like, as they're talking to you, they're dribbling jewels, and those jewels end up turning into a machine elf that starts singing and speaking and dribbling jewels. But so he just said it's like a, you know, like a kaleidoscope of just like the craziest things that are doing the same things, but they're beings. And he says, and everyone says, that they're so happy to see you, that they always say, Terence, you're back. What took you so long to come back? That he says that they like are so happy that you're there, and they want to show you how to create, how they're creating matter out of sound. And so anyway, so I was just super fascinated in it, and was wondering if, because everyone's seeing the same thing, does that mean it's just another part of the phenomena that and their mask is the machine elf, and so everyone else is seeing the machine elves? Or is it like, you know, like Terence was wondering, is taking the substance, bringing you to a specific place where those machine elves live, and that's why everyone is seeing the same thing, because you're going to the same place? Or is it because you're in the same state of mind, because you're all doing the same kind of psychedelic, that is then manifesting the being that you're seeing? So it's very, and like I said, I channeled quite a few messages trying to say, like, what are the machine elves? Are they true? Is it a being? What exactly is happening? And the messages are very complicated, and which made, and they do say in it, like, again, it's just beyond what we can't explain it to you. And that again brings me back to the Bashar quote, where they can't explain it, so they're kind of like dumbing it down so much that it's not really what's happening. But they have no other way of trying to tell us what's happening than dumbing it down so much that it's kind of a lie, because we are so far away from understanding what it is that's really happening. They can't tell us what it really is. So yeah, so I did a couple messages on it, and it's like they said that they're timekeepers and they're time dilators, and they're helping with the fabric of time. They're like the underpinnings of the fabric of time, and they help co-create the reality, the hologram that we're seeing. They're helping us create this reality that we're seeing. So they are real beings, and they're helping us in times of our lives. I think they said something like times of our lives when it's time to make a change, to take a step up, to go to a different direction. It's not just going to work, coming home, eating and sleeping kind of thing. It's like the day that you meet someone who changes your mind, you read a new book, you watch a new show on TV, you know, talk to someone and they give you this, like, you know, like great idea or whatever. It's like those times are like cogs, like a wheel in Desta's life. There's these big wheels once in a while, right? And so it's like the day that the wheel comes, this message says that the machine elves help, and they're the ones that with the cog helps tie what you're going forward, future reality, after you've had this big, like, I don't even know if I could explain it properly, like the cog in the wheel of your life, when you have these big changes that happen in your life. The machine elves, this message said, they help make the future reality at these big changes, these big nodes of your life where change is happening. They help tie the timeline together. Like it's very complicated. And they said, and this is not even how it is. This is like, you know, this is how we're trying to explain how reality works, but it's like so far beyond, you know, what we can explain. This is just like a really, you know, dumbed down version of it. So it's very hard to explain, and it's not even true. You know, it's not even really how it is anyways, but it's very interesting. I'm fascinated with them and how our reality, how we're constructing our reality, and what exactly it is, if it's a simulation or if it's a hologram, or if we're really all co-creating it together, if we decided, you know, that we were going to do this before we were born, or how exactly it's actually working.
Well, you know, based on what you just said, actually, I was having a thought as you were talking about the machine elves and the fact that they, you know, whenever their language is these jewels that come dribbling out, and then each jewel becomes another machine elf that dribbles out more jewels, that, you know, and that those become more machine elves that dribble out more jewels. It makes me think that is such a wonderful visual, I guess, mirror for exactly what you were just doing with what you were expressing, where you're saying, you know, there are all these possibilities. Like, you want to know, you know, you're saying, what do you want to know? Where's this all coming from? Like, who are the beings that are expressing these things? So where is the information coming from? What is the origin of all of this? But every time you open a door, then there's 10 more, right? 10 more questions, 10 more possibilities. And you open each of those 10 doors, and then there's 10 more possibilities and questions within those doors. And so every time we have a question, or we want to investigate and try to find out, you know, what is actually going on here? Like, what are UFOs? Why are they arriving? Who is in them? live? How do they work? What are the aliens? Where are they coming from? What are they, why are they here? What is all happening? What is all of this? Why is this happening? It's millions and millions of doors. It's like those mirrors when you go to a house of mirrors and you look at yourself in the mirror and you see endless versions of yourselves. It's the same kind of thing. So when you're talking about the machine elves, dribbling jewels and then turning into more machine elves, it's just such a wonderful kind of representation of multiple dimensionality, and in terms of time, all the endless possibilities, because time is really about endless possibilities and all the endless branches that become our reality, become different timelines for us. So I just thought that was terrific. And actually, Grant wanted to ask a question, so I'm gonna again.
Thank you. Once again, I mean, both of you are very eloquent. I mean, I'm sort of very blessed to have such minds around me. The question I had for Desta, maybe you can, because we haven't really gotten to what the name of your books are, and can you give the names of your book and then tell me what you think is the number one message? You've gotten a lot of messages over a number of years. What do you think is the number one message? And the second part of a question, and then I'll give it back to Sinead, is what's your take on synchronicity?
Interesting. The machine elves. I'll forward you this one message, both of you. But the machine elves actually, in this message that I was just talking about, they say that they're the ones that line up the synchronicities. Because they're tied into creating the fabric of how we construct our reality, and these cogs. So every time that there's a big change in your life that's going to lead you to a different future because something's just happened, they're weaving timelines. This is what they say, again. So they're weaving these timelines. So say that we have an infinite amount of realities, like Bashar says right now too, right? We have an infinite amount of parallel dimensions that we're doing, almost the exact same thing in the next reality, except one thing's different. I have a different house. I'm living in a different city. I'm closer to the beach. But it's an infinite amount, right? We have all these things. So, and Bashar says kind of like we're flipping through every minute that we're actually doing something. We're flipping through all the different parallel dimensions that we're living in, our different lives are living in. Wherever we're focusing on at the actual second is how time is unfolding, like in linear time. We're just jumping from all our different parallel realities that we're living in, all these different dimensions. And the machine elves basically kind of are saying the same thing. They're tying timelines together. So when you have the cog in the wheel and you're like, okay, I'm moving from Winnipeg, I'm not living here anymore. The big decision that you do something and make a conscious intention and an effort and change something big in your life. So the times in your life when these big cogs come and a big something is going to change, they're tying the timeline. So they say that they're getting the timeline of this parallel reality where you're already living that, which Bashar says, but this message said that the machine elves are actually tying them together. So they're like sewing together timelines when you're having big changes in your life where you are changing something permanent in your life and changing your future. So instead of just jumping, like Bashar would say, you're just jumping like millions of pages through a book, you're just jumping to a different timeline every time you make any decision. Even should I have chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream, that's like a different, you're just like going back and forth between the different dimensions. But the machine elves anyway say that they're tying the timelines together. So they're changing the structure of how your actual linear time is in this one life, like after you die, because every time you're changing your mind and doing something, they're sewing the timelines together to change what your reality is going to be. And the number one message, I guess, in these books is oneness. They really say it a lot, and that we've decided to come to this 3D world. We're living in the earth right now, this one 3D world or whatever, that we all come from oneness. We're going back to oneness source. We have an infinite number of lives that we've already lived and that we're going to live and exist in different things and have different experiences and everything. And that we are constructing it, we are creating it out of our own volition, our own intention, and they are helping and they are always around. And they always say that everyone just needs to ask for help and ask for guidance and ask to talk to them, to get information from them or whatever. and yeah, that we're infinite beings and just having a 3D experience at a time. But this is definitely not what we are, and this is a very short snapshot of you know, what we're going to be. And we go back to source and we can create anything we want because we're all part of source.
And the names of your books.
So A Glimpse into Reality, into Infinity. This is the new one. A Glimpse into Infinity, Channel Messages Beyond Time. And the first one was called Mirroring Worlds, Channeled Reflections from Higher Dimensions.
So if you were going to sum this book up for people who don't know anything about it whatsoever, don't know anything about you, how would you explain to them what this book is about?
So, so like I said, it's mostly 95%. It's just messages. It's messages that I received when I was channeling. I type them all down. I compile them into a book, try and put them into chapters where they are similar kind of messages. There's a lot of information in this one about, you know, people think that they have missions. They're in this world and they have a mission or whatever. So a lot of, there's, you know, a chapter here that's all about reincarnation and how our missions play out, and how we have many past lives that are very, very similar. The last, you know, 10 or 100 or 1,000, whatever you want to say, lives, you were kind of on the same mission, doing the same kind of thing over and over, because it's not just one life where you're going to learn, you know, everything. Obviously, if this is an infinite amount of time that we're reincarnating and doing and having different experiences or whatever. So there's a bunch of reincarnation. There is a bunch of stuff because, like I said, I was Grant and I are good friends with Steve Mara, and he is a parapsychologist and, you know, doing all the spirit and seances and hauntings and stuff like that. So I asked a lot of questions about residual energy being left in houses, and, you know, people when they die in houses, traumatic experiences, like how energy is left behind. And how these hauntings actually work, and if people can communicate the same way that channeling is happening, if people can communicate with their deceased relatives, and if they're around here, if it's just their energy in the corner, and how you can like clear houses of stuff like that. And, you know, I asked a lot of questions about that kind of paranormal stuff in this book, which I didn't know about. Like, I didn't know I could ask those things before. Yeah, so it's and then there's a whole there's all the machine elves chat, like different messages, and a bunch of messages that are just from different beings. So they say they're from, you know, this place, or they're light beings, or, you know, wing makers. I didn't know what a wing maker was before, and I have a couple messages on wing makers and things that say they contributed with trying to help humanity, like set themselves up on Earth originally or whatever. So it's just messages from all that kind of thing. I don't know if that's the same kind of topics or not, but it's just whatever those messages are, whatever things I was thinking about or investigating, I asked, and it's just a compilation of all the messages.
Okay, so then relating to that, would you say that there's I mean, just a minute ago, you mentioned that if you were going to, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but that if you were going to say there was an overarching theme, that it would be oneness, right? That it would be oneness. So how could you verbalize what that means? I mean, you know, to people who are experienced in this field, they understand what oneness is, not what it is necessarily, but, you know, what it basically is, what the idea of it is, what it means essentially. So, considering that there are lots of different messages in your book, and they're coming from lots of different kinds of beings, but the theme, or the one connective tissue between all of them is oneness, then if that's the same message, what is it? What is the message?
Well, I had one message where I'm not always shown a physical thing, like an actual vision kind of thing, but I am sometimes, and they're so powerful that I will never forget them. So this is a good one, to answer your question. So there was this. It was more about source than oneness, but oneness is source, because so in my interpretation, or in my opinion, or whatever, like source is the one. That's the place that I feel that before I saw that black cube thing, we were all source. Source is just all of us. It is all of the bits of our consciousness. So in one message, I saw this is very strangely looked like, you know, there's like the Hindu kind of Buddha and the Chinese kind of Buddha. So the Chinese Buddha is just like the very round, happy, long earlobe gold Buddha. And so I saw that. So say source is, say that's what he looks like, or it looks like, right, is just like a big, round, happy, fat, golden Buddha. And out of his head, there were threads, like an infinite amount of threads coming from the head of the Buddha. So I saw this, and this one message was saying like, this is kind of like how reincarnation works. It's kind of like how source is and oneness works. So the thread that's coming from the Buddha's head, each thread is one of us, but we're all coming from the inside of the head of the Buddha. So that's how we're connected back to source, because we are source, because we are the thread. And it kept saying this in the message, like, you are the thread. You're not a bit on the thread. So like our life, so like Desta's life of an infinite amount of different parallel realities, doing an infinite number of different things, some of them on Earth, parallel dimensions. I could be not even a human being and something totally different on another plane, existence, dimension, reality, whatever. But the thread is me. So the thread is me, but every single, like, say, millimeter on the thread is a different life, a different point in this infinite amount of expressions that I'm giving myself, being a part of source, because the thread is coming out of source. So source split itself up into an infinite amount of threads and chose to have a bit of consciousness, which is each of us, be these threads. And the thread, on the thread, is all of my past lives, all of my future lives, all of my parallel dimensional lives, or whatever. So, but I am the thread, and I'm connected to source because I'm coming from source. I'm part of source. Source is what decided to split up, and some of the bits of source of this, of the infinite amount of, you know, bits of consciousness that decided to go into the black cube, that decided to be matter, that decided to have a different experience, to be in a different planet or different reality, or, you know, whatever, Earth. But we're all from source because we're all part of the infinite brain, or whatever you want to call it, of source, being the threads. But my thread is also all of the different parts of me, a million different parts of me playing out right now, in the past, the future, all that kind of stuff. But I'm part of source because, and that's how we're all one. We're all one because we are source. So source is the golden Buddha. It split itself into a zillion threads, and in each of the zillion threads you have your zillion different lifetimes, but we're all part of source and we're all one because we all are source. That's just how source split itself up to have a million different experiences, to try and bring the information back into source so it can experience itself, having all these different experiences. But we all are the threads, just different points on the thread, depending on where we're thinking our focus is right now, depending on where you're, you know, where you're viewing yourself or thinking about yourself.
Another short comment, and then I'll send it back to Sinead. I told Sinead that Desta and I have had some pretty long conversations, like 10, 12 hours, or like all the way to Eureka Springs. And from time to time, we get into heated conversations. This has sort of reassured me. I said to Sinead, I got to be careful because this is channeled material. And today I'm even more impressed. I'm going to just shut up because this material may be where true. This may be where it's coming from. And I'm very impressed with, after all the conversations I've had with you, the material you're getting. I think people have to tap into this, and I'm very impressed with what you're saying today. Thanks.
Thanks, Grant.
Yeah, so beautifully expressed, Desta. I mean, you're really making it come alive, I think, for a lot of people who are going to be listening to this and really enjoying it. You know, it's a really lively, beautiful, evocative description of things that also make sense. So you've just done an amazing job. And it's actually, you're giving me a memory. One of the favorite things that my father ever said to me was, when I was a really little kid, and this completely, my mind just went, you know, he said, what if we are in an apple that's falling from a tree, that's in an apple, that's falling from a tree, that's in an apple, that's falling from a tree? And that's the first time I ever thought of, I guess, you know, I didn't have words for it at the time, but multiple dimensionalities and multiple timelines. And I really like the way you just explained that about the thread idea coming out of the Buddha's head, and how it is connected to every reality that a person can have and to all the realities of everyone else. It was just really, really beautiful. So as we close, even though I don't want to, but we should because we're pushing on 2 hours here, where can people find your books? If they want to buy these books and read about all this fantastic stuff, where can they find them?
They're both on Amazon. So they're both ebooks and paperbacks. Yep. Kindle, on Grants. It's all connected publishing company. And yeah, I'll put a link in the bottom of the description box as well.
Okay, terrific, terrific. And if you can just say one more time what the titles of your books are, just so it really sinks in.
A Glimpse into Infinity, Channel Messages Beyond Time is the new one. And the last one is Mirroring Worlds, Channeled Reflections from Higher Dimensions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Desta. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And I'll close by saying I had a discussion with our friend Mark Olson last week, and I sort of brought up that you should be talking to the Winnipeg group, and maybe Sinead can sort of host that and do a presentation for them. Are you open to, if I can get you a speaking gig, are you willing to now sort of go on and share this information with people? Because I think this is really, really important material. And I know you hesitate to do this kind of stuff, but I'm sure when people see this video, there's going to be a lot of people in the metaphysical world or the woo-woo world who are going to want you to talk. Are you open to doing that kind of stuff?
In person? No.
No, it's a free trip. You get a free trip. You get to travel. That's what you want to do.
I cannot.
This is the only place. Then we've got the exclusive. This is it. We maybe do another one with you down the road where we can get some more material. But this is the one time Desta talks. I'm honored to have had you on today. I'm honored to have been around you and shared the wisdom that you've given me. And this was fantastic. This is one of the best that we've ever had. So thank you very much for doing this for us. And I will do whatever I can to promote you and your books.
Thank you, Grant. Thanks, Sinead.
Okay.